Hey everybody, and welcome to Straight Talk with Bren O'Brien and Tim Rowe from the Straight. We've got Tim live from Karaka today. Obviously, the New Zealand Bloodstock Ready to Run sale underway at the moment. Tim, it was a record-breaking day there on the first day of the sale. We had a $1.65 million two-year-old go through. It was a marquee result, but probably not surprising given the way that this sale's been tracking in recent years.
No, absolutely not. Bren, that colt himself is probably a little bit unique. A horse of his pedigree nor ordinarily wouldn't go to a two-year-old sale, just for whatever reason. He's out of Shillelagh, won two Group 1s for Chris Waller and Christopher Grace, the owner breeder. And just he went to the Easter sale and just everyone said he just wasn't right, whether he's a bit crook or for whatever reason. So they passed him in, which a bit of good fortune for Christopher Grace, apparently one of the biggest sheep breeders of New Zealand, going back a decade or two ago. So, but he's always bred a good horse or two, and Shillelagh's been good to him. And he breezed up in under 10 seconds, which was the only horse of 350 plus that did breeze up those 2 days. And with that pedigree, champion sire, I'm invincible. Obviously, he attracted multiple Hong Kong interest, of course, and Colts sort of syndicates, and David Ellis from Tiakau won out with the support of some big backers, including Yarraman Park, Harry and Arthur Mitchell.
It's an interesting one, wasn't it? Just talk us a bit more. Go back to sort of the sale in general, I guess. Outsiders would probably sit there and look at this and go, "Why is this sale?" Generally, I guess the Karaka yearling sale has got a great reputation, but it probably sits results-wise in terms of returns and whatever else behind what goes on at Inglis Easter and Magic Millions on the Gold Coast, etc. What is it about this New Zealand two-year-old sale? When you look at the Australian two-year-old sale market, it's okay. It does its job. It's probably not as vibrant as perhaps either sales company would want it to be like. But this New Zealand market and this New Zealand sale, it just seems to be going from strength to strength in recent years.
Well, Hong Kong, it's dominated by Hong Kong buyers, certainly the top, and Malaysia now, Singapore and Macau are no longer. We've spoken about this in relation to the Australian sales too earlier on, but this is their source of a lot of good horses. It's 2 days, 400 horses, plenty to choose from, and the vendors are sellers. So it's hard to change perception in racing, even if you present the facts in front of them. Just perception counts for a lot. And New Zealand are known as traders. That's what they do. They buy horses, they breed horses, and they sell horses either in the ring here at two-year-old sales, yearling sales, and certainly off trials, private sales and things like that, which we saw with Kaying Rising dominating on Sunday at Sha Tin, and arguably the best sprinter in the world. He was one bought off a jump out as well. So it's just perception, and that's the way the industry is. A lot of people make their living out of selling horses.
Yeah, I guess the results have shown their way too. We obviously had some really star horses come out of this. Not only Golden 60 over recent years, but a whole bunch of other horses too that have performed exceptionally well in the Hong Kong stage in particular, but Australia as well too, Tim. That's a reality of it. You're coming to this sale, definitely buyers going to this sale are looking for a different type of product than they probably would be looking for at a yearling sale on the Gold Coast in January, or even an Easter sale, at Inglis in April.
One, obviously, these consigners are very good at educating, getting the horses ready, but they're also very good at identifying the right horses that will, appeal to those Hong Kong buyers. And there's a lot of them here. The NZB and New Zealand Thoroughbred Marketing and so forth done a good job getting owners here. Mr. Yang, races the patch horses, sort of a phone entrepreneur, I guess. He's here. He bought 8 on the first day, and he'll probably buy more today by the time this goes out. But the vendors also buy horses that suit that market. Hong Kong, they carry big weights, and so they want big, strong horses that'll breeze. Them maybe not under 10 seconds like the top lot, but between 10 and 10.5 seconds mostly, and they're at this stage of their life weighing 500 to 520 kilos plus. That for Australian colts, 2-year-old golden slippers, they're probably too heavy to get going early, but by the time they mature at 3 and 4, they're ready to go and handle those firm tracks at Sha Tin and Happy Valley and race for 3 and 4 seasons.
Yeah, and I guess that's just the focus of that, the Hong Kong market towards those. They do have 2-year-old racing there, but their primary focus is 3 and then into 4. Obviously, when you've got Hong Kong Derby type horses, and then moving on towards there, so it certainly shapes that market in that regard. I was going to talk to you about the breeze up times, Tim. I mean, it's obviously the piece of data that separates a 2-year-old sale when you've got a horse broken in and ready to go that you've seen a horse actually breeze up and gallop, as opposed to yelling sales which we used to see. I mean, how crucial is that? We often see the fastest breezer ends up being the horse at the top of the market. That horse you spoke about, the I'm Invincible colt, he broke the 10-second mark. There's probably something a little bit mythical about that. And people go, wow, like what an amazing time. And that probably added a little bit of luster to him. I mean, how crucial is that to the buyers, do you feel, Tim, in terms of making their decisions?
I think they're getting a lot. There's a lot of data that goes into it. Jay Kilgore has been doing it for 25 years. An American guy that comes out measuring stride length, yes, time, but it's also like doing form. There's a way of assessing. You can run fast time under the bat and doing it flat out, as opposed to sorry about this. It's good timing. They'll run fast time, but doing it under pressure. But as opposed to, say, again, using that top lot as an example, ran under 10 seconds, but did it really easily. And Ryan Elliott, who breezed that horse up, a New Zealand jockey that a lot of people will know, he got off and they told him the time and he was amazed because he just didn't feel like he was, asked for an effort, and he still did it easily. And that's what trainers are looking for. And particularly now, you don't want a horse that's all jazzed up, and this peaking is an early 2-year-old for a 200-metre gallop because, as we know, races aren't run over 200 metres. So they want some upside just to do it easily, that their action looks good, like an Olympic runner, I guess, probably a 100-metre runner, or probably even 200 and 400-metre runners who just do it easily and athletically and efficiently. It would be the right term.
Probably the other thing about this market too, Tim, is that a lot of the horses are gelded, so therefore there's no residual value, as they talk about it, beyond their racing career. So it's very much focused on looking for race horses, isn't it, Tim? And that's probably why we don't tend to see horses with those massive pedigrees, with the exception of that horse yesterday. I mean, it was quite rare we see a horse out of a champion, 3-time Australian champion sire, out of a dual Group 1 winner. So by a champion 3-time Australian sire. So I think what we saw with that horse is probably a little bit of a unicorn, I suppose, in that regard. Probably not a horse we'd usually see, but I guess good horses are good horses. And if you're looking for a horse that can get out there and do what they need to do on the track, and obviously Tiago that bought that horse have had success with I'm Invincible before, notably through Imperatriz. So it kind of makes sense that the way that sort of lined up, and the fact that that horse is probably set to make a mark relatively quickly. Tim, I'm probably not an early 2-year-old type. You wouldn't say, obviously we're already into the early 2-year-olds, but you think it'd be a horse that'd be up and about pretty quickly.
Well, they're going to give him 2 weeks in the paddock at Te Akau stud, and then he'll be going to Mato, the Te Akau stable in New Zealand, and they're going to, at this stage, of course, a lot can change with horses day to day, week to week, as we know, but they're going to try and get him to the Manawatu sires, Group 1, which Te Akau's won 6 of the last 7 years. And so they'll do that. And then, particularly with those Australian investors involved in the colt, ideally get him across to their Cranbourne stable and try and win an Australian Group 1 at some stage. Obviously, as Harry Mitchell told me, it's a decent bet that they've had, investing in 1.65 million, but, he's got some ability. Hopefully for those guys that he goes on to the top level and he's standing at Yarraman Park one day.
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess to point that out too, he's obviously colt, so that's why there is residual value in a horse like that. But he's probably the exception in that regard, as a lot of these horses are, already gelded or probably on their way to being that way anyway. So no, it is a fascinating type of sale, and I think it's probably adds really to sort of the structure and the colour of the bloodstock scene in Australia. And it's that sale has gone from strength to strength. Great graduates and the way things work through it. And, and I guess the other thing too, Tim, is from that Hong Kong market, just to sort of round the discussion off around this sale, things like as 2-year-olds, they can really develop a bit more through some issues they might have had as yearlings. So therefore, the X-rays are really clear, key, aren't they? So if you get a horse that, maybe as a yearling, the X-rays weren't 100%, they can often clear up by the time they're an early 2-year-old and they're coming to work and work through. And that obviously makes them a lot more appealing to a Hong Kong market. That's, this is where they buy their horses out of, and that they can be assured that, it'll pass their protocols and get to race over there.
Yeah, the Hong Kong vets are very stringent on what they pass and allow, particularly scope and X-rays, because as we touched on, it's expensive to race a horse up there and get a horse up there. But once they do, they want them racing 3 and 4 seasons, and they have a lot of starts, and and then on firmish track. So that's why they are stringent, and when the horses that do fit that criteria, they pay a lot of money for them.
Right, we'll move on now to the Rosehill issue. It's an issue we've probably spoken about more than anything else, or it's written about more than anything else since the straight started up almost 12 months ago. Tim, is it probably fair to say it's been the biggest issue, the most persistent issue throughout 2024 in the Australian racing industry?
Well, since we've sort of started this podcast, Bren, we seem to have spoken about it every week, because there's something new that's popped up, or a new issue, or something raised in Parliament. And understandably, people are passionate about they're an ATC member or just a racing fan. I guess they're passionate about Rosehill and its future and where it sits. It's still bubbling away. Plenty happening, Bren. There's the upcoming ATC AGM on November 28th. So what's going to happen there? That'll be fascinating, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've got two effective vacant seats. So we've got Tim Hale, who's recontesting his seat, and Angela Bell McSweeney's stepping down after serving her sort of period of time. So therefore, Tim Hale's probably in a good position to recontest. He's currently the vice chairman, and we've got a suite of candidates. I think there's 10 candidates in all, Tim, that are putting their name forward. To obviously, there's a lot of interest in this. This is probably the first time that the ATC has fronted the members since those sort of abandoned members forum, I suppose, early in February, March time, in the early part of the Rosehill. So I guess this is the first AGM since the Rosehill announcement was put out there. So you get a feeling that this is going to be there's going to be a lot to be said. I know that a certain independent MP from New South Wales will be there. Mark Latham will most likely be there as the ATC member, so he'll be having plenty to say. But the vote itself will be fascinating. And Warwick Bar, there's a story going up today, will be up by the time this gets published out, about David Walter, one of the key candidates there. And we sort of profiled David Walter because, obviously he's on the Save Rosehill ticket, so there's interest there from that perspective and where he sits. But he contested the previous or a previous election, I think 4 years ago. Wasn't successful. Wasn't that keen to sort of get involved again. But the Rosehill, or the uproar around Rosehill, has really galvanised his interest. He's quite well spoken. I think he's resonated quite clearly with a lot of candidates. So Warwick's had a good chat with him, and it's pretty clear from his perspective that he thinks the ATC have got other priorities to be focusing on rather than this massive Rosehill proposal. And so what is interesting about that is, to a certain extent, when you look at, it's hard to argue that that's not the case, that there are better things to focus on, because there are significant issues confronting not only that club, but race clubs around Australia, around their future financial viability, Tim. So these are concerns around these things. Tim Hale's an interesting one. He's obviously vice chairman. He spoke at the Rosehill Select Committee. He's clear that he would prefer that this Rosehill proposal not be on the agenda. There's a bit of a split between he and the chairman, Peter McGorran, which is interesting. And I think that there's how that plays out will be interesting. We've seen elsewhere, and notably the Melbourne Racing Club, that directors of these race clubs can change very, very quickly. And so we've seen a complete about face with what happened. There was a story earlier this week on profiling John Kanga, the charismatic Melbourne Racing Club chairman, who probably 10 weeks ago most of us hadn't heard of, and now he's probably one of the more influential people in Victorian racing. So things can change in a hurry in these club politics, and it's hard to see that's it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. But you've got a feeling that a lot of things are going to come to the surface at this AGM on November 28th.
And it's not just the ATC that's affected by this. It's there's political ramifications, Bren, and obviously the Senate or the Upper House inquiry of New South Wales Parliament. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, the Legislative Council have been busy talking about Peter V'landys. He features quite often in their discussions. And so just to sort of put a bow around that stuff, I guess the Select Committee, which has been talking about a lot and has been sitting throughout the year. Their report's due on December 6th, which is interesting. I think the exact anniversary when Rosehill proposal was announced. But anyway, so it's December 6th. So we'll hear a lot about that. But in the meantime, there's been a lot of discussion in the upper house of New South Wales Parliament around a bunch of a bill that's been put forward by Mark Latham to put greater restrictions on, well, not greater restrictions, greater oversight on Racing New South Wales, sorry, and their operations. There's a few other bits and pieces as well. There's a few there's some orders for papers, which is basically trying to compel Racing New South Wales to present some information to Parliament. There's a lot of discussion going on at the moment, and they're really much at the centre of all that. So you kind of feel that this is gonna roll on, Tim. That regardless of what happens with Rosehill specifically, it's probably unearthed a few things that certainly members of Parliament who have a political point to prove around this stuff are keen to unearth. And the spotlight will remain on Racing New South Wales and their operations for some time to come.
And you suggest that Peter V'landys may appear before the Parliament.
There's a little bit of I was reading through the parliamentary notes yesterday, and this date of February 13 next year keeps coming up as a possible date for Mr. V'landys to appear before Parliament. That will be obviously a pretty significant moment if that was to occur. I'm not completely sure that that's definitely going to happen at this stage because there's a whole bunch of things to play through, I think. But that date keeps on coming up, and the fact they've got a precise date and a precise time for him to appear would indicate that the appointment's at least been penciled in the diary from the New South Wales Parliament point of view. Whether that's going to be acknowledged or what happens from the Racing New South Wales point of view, I'm not too sure. But it certainly paints a picture that, as I said, regardless of what happens with Rosehill, the ATC could turn up, put their hand up, and say, "Nah, we're out of this." They may do that, but I kind of have the feeling that this is not going anywhere. And certainly not this Parliament. There's a bit of time for that to run, and certainly not while Mark Latham's around, because he seems to have a real desire to see greater accountability at Racing New South Wales. And to be perfectly honest, he's stated himself he doesn't want Peter V'landys in charge anymore. Now, it's not Mark Latham's decision, but he has the political powers at his disposal, or political levers at his disposal, in order to make that not make that happen, but in order to press that case. So, I said, two very determined people. I can't see this going anywhere, Tim. That's my point. I think 2025 we're still seeing plenty of headlines about Racing New South Wales and the parliamentary demand for greater accountability. All right, we move on now to an issue at the close to your heart, Tim. We've spoken about this before.
I don't know what you're suggesting, Bren, but anyway.
No. We're talking about this personally because it's an interesting one. We've had chats about this before about the use of bowlers by other punters. I guess the term bowler is third parties set up and to bet on accounts on someone else's behalf. It's a highly contentious issue. It's one that's spoken about a lot, and it comes off the back of an article that received a really strong reaction on the Straight this week. It was an article about an account holder, a Ladbrokes account holder and who took Ladbrokes to the Northern Territory Racing Commission, or Racing and Wagering Commission, whatever they're called these days, over the fact that they deposited, I think, about $6,000. They won $30,000. They went to withdraw all the money, and it was found, or Ladbrokes said that they were concerned that person wasn't the person that was actually betting or funding the account. And look through the details of the case yourself. It looked like a pretty clear case in this instance that they were betting on the behalf of a third party, including the fact that when Ladbrokes spoke to this person, they spoke to him on a number of occasions, and it was different voices every time, and it didn't look good. But put it this way: if they were trying to hide something, they didn't do much of a job of it. But regardless, it does speak to the broader discussion around bowlers, Tim, and where things sit. I mean, what's your perspective on this one, Tim? I mean, what are the bookies in the right here to be highly vigilant on the use of third-party accounts for people to bet on horses?
Well, we all want to pull one over the bookies, don't we? We love that's part of the thrill of punting is yes, trying to win money, but also just pulling off a sting lead. Not suggesting anything nefarious there, but getting one over the bookies and winning and pulling off a plunge or whatever. In this specific case, look, didn't seem like they were overly intelligent the way they went about it. Just the way that we've spoken about this before, and written about it, but the way the tax structures are set up on corporate bookies these days, it is arguably prohibitive, the amount it costs to, so I can understand their position. There is 80 to 100 online bookies now. As long as everyone, the punters and the bookies play by the rules and bet minimum bets, which not all of them do, as we know, but if from the time the prices go up, you could get on to win $1,000 or $2,000, I think that would be fair, as long as and on all markets, not just, Sydney and Melbourne, but all markets. If it's on Sky Channel, I'm a racing punter. If it's on Sky Channel, you should be able to bet on it to, win $1,000 or something is pretty reasonable and fair, I would have thought. So how we get there, I'm not really sure, Bren. Obviously, there's an inquiry or been a report. You win some, you lose more report that's sort of been bubbling away for 12 months or more. Bren, where are we at with that?
Yeah, so what is interesting is out of that report, to sort of go back to that, obviously the highlight out of that report has been the advertising restrictions, and that's popped that's taken a lot of the attention. There was a recommendation in that report for a federal independent wagering ombudsman who would look into the behaviour of bookmakers and also, I guess, issues of this type where people could take complaints to talk to. And the concern is that the Northern Territory Racing and Wagering Commission, obviously, because of the nature of the structure of racing, betting in Australia, there's a lot of licensed bookmakers in the Northern Territory. And so, therefore, they hear a lot of cases about the same companies over and over again. So, is that, are you better off to basically remove all doubt, have a federally based ombudsman where people can sit there and complain and say, hey, I put $4,000 in, I won the money, they won't pay me out. What's the story is? Now, that was discussed, but that hasn't been moved beyond that. And I think that's probably a little bit of a concern, because what is interesting is that the racing bodies that I spoke to after that report basically told me that they didn't want another layer of bureaucracy involved in racing. Now, they're happy to take care of them themselves. But I think what they've shown is the PRAs in particular haven't been particularly good. I know Racing Victoria were active on this a few months ago, and they put out a statement saying we're going to crack down on people using compliance measures to stop winning punters. That's fine, right? We've yet to see evidence of that, and certainly anecdotally what we hear through people is that it's not working in the bookies' favour. Sorry, not working in the punters' favour, and the bookies have too much power. I mean, the concern here, Tim, isn't it that the bookies can use this as an excuse to ban winning punters if they can utilise the systems they've got in place in order to, the onus is back on the punter to prove they're not betting for someone else. That's the problem, isn't it?
It is arduous. I've been through this. I won't name the bookie, but I've been through this in the last couple of months, having to supply bank statements and, basically give up a kidney just to get money out of an account, which is, and I guess they want you to go away and make it's too hard, and we want, from a PRA's perspective, you want as many people as possible and to bet within their limits, of course. We don't want problem gambling, but, to make it as easy to fund, to bet, and enjoy their betting experience, particularly on racing. And again, maybe maybe the Northern Territory Racing and Wagering Commission isn't the way to do it. Maybe we do need a more federal one. But again, that would have to allow the states to relinquish some of their control, I guess.
Yeah, and that's probably the challenge, I suppose. And I mean, from a punter's perspective, I mean, to be honest, Tim, never been an issue for me, but I'm very rarely a winning punter, so I'm probably not someone to be talking to about this. But do you feel like it's an issue that how do you fix this? How do you get that sense that it's an even battle? Because if there's a perception out there that people are only getting banned because they're winning punters, not because they're betting on someone else's behalf, which the bookies refute, and that's fair enough, but the indication is there that they're not willing to take on winning punters, only willing to take on losing punters. It's not really a fair game, is it? I mean, it's not really. It's too heavily tipped in one way. As you mentioned, this has probably come into the spotlight because bookies have had to have now pay per week consumption tax and the other racefield tax and other imposts upon the way that they do their business. And racing in particular has become a high cost, low margin business for them. So, it becomes difficult for them to do that. But I guess how do we resolve this, Tim? How do we get to a point where we're like, all right, let's get a fairer market and actually create this notion of that it's actually a much more of a fairer contest.
That's a yeah, it's an open question. I don't have all the answers or all the answers really. I'm just yeah. Again, I think it's a fair minimum bet laws, but again, punters are there's always people looking for edge. That's the appeal of the game of punting is trying to find that edge. Bookies are betting, opening 135, 140%. So they've got a reasonable margin there. It's for the punters to try and overcome that. And again, it's happened to me where you take a good price and it firms right up and they blow up about it. But if I back one at $5 and it starts 25 to 1, no one, I don't get to cancel my bet. So, it's just if you want to be a bookmaker, you've also got to take the bet, and that on racing, it's not a poker machine, and that's where it's sort of headed. Unfortunately, is some of them, not all of them, want to win on every bet, and that just shouldn't be the case and can't be the case.
Thanks for joining us on Straight Talk. Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you're listening and to our podcast, and be sure to subscribe to whatever platform you're coming through, and give us plenty of feedback. Happy to see emails at editor@thestraight.com.au. We'll see you next week and enjoy your racing week.